Hello. This screencast is going to talk to you about and walk you through some uses for your beginning of year multiple choice data. Hopefully you're excited to find out some more. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually go and find your data. So you're going to need to log into Eduphoria or Aware. And as you see me hovering over this, you can see that the website is https secure yesprep.schoolobjects.com/eduphoria. That's enough of the website to get you there. You can also get there through navigation. So once you're there, you're going to log in. And you may or may not have all of these options to you. I have unlimited district access to do all sorts of crazy things, but you're going to want to log into Aware. And once again, your view is going to look a little bit different from my view because I have access to all of the data for the whole system. So if you care about a 7th grade science test, you just let me know. But what you're going to want to do once you run your data in your Scantrons is to go and find out how your students did on particular questions. There's a really helpful report that tells you this information. So on the left-hand side of your tabs in Aware, find the Reports tab. There's all sorts of reports that have different uses, but the one that is most helpful in the day-to-day for a teacher is the Incorrect Responses report. So you're going to pick that report. Then, of course, you're going to search for the actual test that you're looking for. So once again, please ignore the 12 bajillion tests that I have listed here. And we're looking for, side note, Aware is very slow. So I recommend multitasking while you do anything with Aware. For example, right now, you can't see it, but I have vocab quizzes sitting right next to me, needing to be graded. So I'm going to look for the AP benchmark, so go scroll down to Star and AP benchmarks. This year, 11th grade, ELA, and there's my benchmark, it pops up. Now, you probably won't have these choices, but if you do, you're going to want to look at your data by teacher rather than by campus or by the system as a whole. And I recommend you order question by question. So then you're going to click Submit Report. And side note, it's going to take, I don't know, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. And you'll see at the bottom of your screen eventually, it'll pop up and ask you if you want to open or save the report. Right now, it looks like nothing is happening. It's totally normal. Aware is generating your report. It's just very slow. So like I said, pull out some grading and get started. But then, once you have the report, it's going to look like this. So here is my report, and it's question by question. It tells me what the actual answer was, and then it gives me the choice that any student who got the question wrong selected instead of the correct answer. So Joanna and Vivini both picked D, and Brianna picked C, and so on and so forth. But the answer to number 1 was A. If, like on Common Assessments, we have entered fake TEKs, those will be listed here for the objective, and you can go and cross-reference the TEK to Aware code. What I'm going to recommend to you once you have this document is to think about it in a few different ways. The first one is I'm going to decide what's going to be the tipping point for my class in terms of misunderstandings. Now, it's the beginning of the year, and there are certainly some things that we just haven't taught yet. So I'm also not particularly interested in doing all sorts of massive reteaching because a lot of this is just new teaching that we haven't gone over yet. So I'm really only going to look at or think about places where more than 50% of my students missed a question as something I'm going to want to focus my time on this year. So in my class of 28, if more than 15 students have missed a question, that's a question I want to dig into. I can kind of just do a casual scroll to begin. Right here we have 14 students missed number 1, so we haven't quite made the cut. Oh, but it looks like number 2 we're definitely going to need to go over. Number 3, it's touch and go. Number 4, As I'm scrolling, what you'll notice, I imagine this is probably pretty similar for your students, is that a lot of students miss a lot of questions, and that is totally normal because it's the beginning of the year. But like I said, if we can find trends where, 20 kids missed the same question, that's a question that's going to be really time well spent if we look into it and investigate and practice it in class. So even though 12 kids missed number 7, I'm less interested in what's going on there in the beginning of the year. So I'm scrolling and picking out some questions. Okay, we're going to go over not 9, but I'm definitely going to go over 10. And 11. Whoa, yikes, that 11 looks pretty bad. So I'm going to just make a list of those somewhere. One other thing you might want to think about too is whether all of the students selected the same wrong answer or they selected totally different wrong answers. There might be a guessing component here. So when I'm looking at number 11 where the answer is D, I noticed that kids picked C and B and E and even A, so the wrong answers are totally spread across the board, meaning they don't know whatever that question is asking. That is a new skill or new information or something I taught wrong already in the beginning of the year, I don't know. Versus, if we look at number 17, all students who got it wrong picked either A or B. So there's something really interesting happening in those answer choices that I want to hone in on, because C and E didn't trip kids up at all. No one picked that. So similarly with number 18, only a very small handful of kids got this question wrong, and 3 out of 4 of them picked F. So there's something going on with the answer F that made Priscilla, Alondra, and Angelica all get tricked by that. And side note, this is neither here nor there, but I have 23 girls and 5 boys in my class this year, hence all the female names. Okay, you might also want to search for particular students. Now, it's the beginning of the year, and if your SAFs are anything like mine, I've got a ton of SAF 2s, and that's not particularly helpful information until I start to parse them out a little bit more. But I do have SAF 1s, and also 3s, and I also have 2 miraculous SAF 4s. And they both scored super, super high on this beginning of year benchmark. So it's maybe helpful for me to search for, using Control F, Oscar and Jess, to see which particular questions they missed, because they only missed a handful. And that might even be something I could just hand them this information and they might be able to self-teach some of the information that they got wrong. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is think about things in sort of 4 categories. Are there questions that I might do a whole or part of class just full-on reteach? Hey, we seem to miss this information, let's reteach it and practice it. Are there questions that were just actually kind of challenging that might make good questions to fold into other things that we're just organically doing in class? Maybe the questions that I ask while we're discussing doubt. Maybe a do first. We start every day, 3 days in a row, with the same type of question for a cold passage. Maybe I want to do one-on-one check-ins with smaller groups to clarify what's happening with something particular, or even just a one-on-one with particular students. And then there are also some skills that I'm just going to totally forget about for now and just not worry about it. So when I went through, here's kind of some of the thinking that I did. I'm going to actually start about the forget about it for now category. If you remember when I went through, it looked like almost every single one of my students missed question 11. The form of the poem may best be described as a lyric, ballad, sonnets, octaves, enjambed, la la la. All this terminology has my kids totally confused because, as we found out from Allison at the beginning of year, kids really didn't spend very much time at all on poetry and English 2. And we haven't started our really intensive poetry unit yet. We're going to talk about a handful of poems here and there, but really not until January am I getting into the nitty-gritty of enjambed versus end stops and all of those nuances of octaves and sestets and la la la. So it's okay with me that 22 or however many students missed question 11, because I am going to just move on from that. We'll come back to it. Backtracking, I did some searching for Oscar. who's one of my 2 SAF4s. I was really curious to see what types of questions he was answering incorrectly, because really, with a few more questions right, he might already be at a 5 at the beginning of the year. And I noticed something. He missed 2 questions almost back to back that ask about connotation of a particular word. And that is absolutely something that I can target individual practice for Oscar. He can do it with his independent reading book. I can ask him some targeted questions while we're all as a group discussing doubt. I might prepare a question asking about how Sister Aloysius says to get that one girl through intact, period, and say, hey, Oscar, what does intact mean? Funny. I also noticed in my one-on-one search that Briseida left a whole bunch of questions blank at the end. I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find that for you. Towards the end of the test, you see Briseida begins to peter off and start to leave questions blank. So she left almost every question blank after number 38. That is an important lesson to learn from the beginning of the year. We never ever leave anything blank. If we pick B all the way through, that's fine, but leaving something blank are points left on the table, and that becomes a conversation with Briseida now, so she never makes that mistake again. So those are two random associations of things that I'm going to look at for my trends and think about what I can do one-on-one with students. Now let's talk about actual reteaching. I had 23 students miss the question number 40, which is simple, which of these is an apostrophe question? And students technically probably have been taught what an apostrophe is, and they certainly went over it at the beginning of the year in a boot camp situation, and they just didn't apply that information here. So it hasn't been sticky for them. I don't need a ton of information. I can do a 2-minute, hey, an apostrophe is discussing or talking to directly an inanimate object, can't talk back. Look, here it is in number 40. We all see? Okay, here's a cold example. Project it on the board or print them a poem and have them look for it. And do that, 3 days in a row, and it should be sticky after the 3rd time in a row that students see the same information and understand it. So that's just an example where in 3 to 4 instructional minutes a day, I can cement the understanding of what an apostrophe is so they never miss that again. Those types of questions, the identify level, the define kind of Bloom's questions, are easier. What I'm most interested in are these questions that students get wrong that are based in literal comprehension or beginning analysis. So for example, question number 14, all the way back to 14. I had a ton of students miss number 14, and I was especially interested because some of my highest achieving students, including Jess Meza, who had the highest score in the beginning of year, and some of my lowest students as well in the same group all missed this question, which means that this is a really challenging skill that kids need to work on. That's a little snippet of Jane Austen, and she's a novelist speaking, and that's just kind of a tricky moment for the kids to understand that the novelist is speaking to the reader of the novel. I can easily fold in some questions about Gatsby. In this part of the chapter, Nick, the narrator, is speaking primarily as, and maybe I'll write a legitimate multiple choice question and have them answer this question. Maybe I'll ask this question open-endedly, but in that I've aligned a type of question to one of these thinking that students miss, and I'm helping reinforce how narrators operate, what it looks like, how to analyze narrator, etc. Similarly, the poem, question number 2, about 20 students missed. Lines 1 through 4 are best understood as attempt by the speaker to verb, 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 verb. That's another question that I can easily transfer and translate into something that we're already going to be talking about. So maybe I want to say Sister Aloysius's lines on page 34 are best understood as her attempt to, and I can give that as a multiple choice question, or I can just give the stem and have students write the answer choices, or have students just complete the sentence. But in this way, we're reinforcing the paraphrase and purpose skills happening in that question in a totally aligned way moving forward. So these are just a few things that you can think about as you are digging into your data, and I'm